The last time I spoke to my sister was on a payphone outside a gas station in December of 1997. It was freezing. I remember my breath coming out in clouds and my fingers going numb holding the receiver. She picked up on the third ring and the first thing she said was, "Tommy, where the hell are you?" And the first thing I said back was, "You wouldn't understand." That sentence didn't come from me. I know that now. That sentence was planted in my head by people who had spent months carefully, methodically, patiently turning me against every single person I had ever loved. And the worst part is I thought I was the one who figured it out. I thought I was the one who finally saw the truth about my own family. I thought I was protecting myself. I wasn't protecting myself. I was being isolated. And isolation is the single most important tool a cult has. Because a person with strong outside relationships is a person who might leave. A person with no one left on the outside has nowhere to go. And a person with nowhere to go will tolerate almost anything. My name is Thomas Erickson. I'm 51 years old. I spent 10 years inside a group called the Garden of the Eternal Light, led by a man who called himself Father Matthias. In my last video, I told you how I got recruited. Today, I want to tell you about something that still keeps me up at night. How they took my family away from me without ever telling me to stop talking to them. Before I joined the community, I didn't have much family left. My mother had died. My father had been gone since I was a kid. But I had my sister Karen. She was 4 years older than me. We weren't extremely close, the kind of siblings who talked every day, but she was there. She had called me every couple of weeks after our mom died. She had offered to let me stay with her in Portland when I was struggling. She had sent me a check for $500 once with a note that said, "Just in case." She wasn't perfect and we had our issues, but she was my sister and she loved me, and I loved her. Within 8 months of joining the community, I had completely cut her off, stopped returning her calls, stopped opening her letters. When she drove 3 hours to the property to check on me, I refused to come out of my cabin. I stood behind the door and listened to her crying on the porch, and I felt nothing. Actually, that's not true. I felt something. I felt annoyed. I felt like she was being dramatic and selfish and that she was trying to pull me back into a broken world that I had finally escaped. That's what they did to me. They took the one person who genuinely cared about me and made me see her as the enemy. And they did it so slowly that I never once felt manipulated. Here's how it works. It starts with reframing. Not about your family specifically, at least not at first. In the early weeks and months at the community, the group discussions and teachings from Father Matthias focused heavily on the concept of the old self versus the new self. The idea was that before you found the community, you were living in a state of unconsciousness. You were sleepwalking through a broken world, shaped by broken people, carrying broken patterns. Your old relationships, your old habits, your old way of thinking, all of it was part of the old self. And the community was helping you become the new self. Awake, aware, free. On the surface, this sounds like standard self-help language. Become a better version of yourself. Leave your baggage behind. Start fresh. Nothing about it seemed extreme or dangerous. But what it was actually doing was creating a framework where everything from your past, including the people from your past, could be categorized as part of the problem. Not yet, not explicitly, but the frame was being built. The second phase was what I call the diagnosis sessions. Every few weeks, members would sit in a circle with one of the senior leaders and do what they called deep work. You would talk about your childhood, your family dynamics, your relationships, and the group would help you identify the toxic patterns that had been holding you back. Sounds like therapy, right? It's not. Because in real therapy, a trained professional helps you understand your family with nuance. People are complex. Relationships are complicated. A good therapist helps you see the full picture. In these sessions, the goal was the opposite. The goal was to reduce your family to a set of flaws, failures, and wounds. I remember the session where we talked about my sister. The leader that day was a woman named Patricia who had been in the community for about 15 years. She asked me to describe my relationship with Karen. I said it was fine. We weren't super close, but she cared about me. Patricia nodded and then started asking questions. "Did Karen support your decision to come here?" I said she didn't really know much about it. Patricia said, "Interesting. So she's not curious about the most important change in your life?" I said she's just busy with her own stuff. Patricia said, "Or maybe she's threatened by your growth. Has she ever tried to hold you back from something?" And suddenly I was thinking about every small disagreement Karen and I had ever had. The time she told me dropping out of college was a mistake. The time she said I should maybe talk to a professional after mom died instead of moving across the state. The time she questioned why I was spending every weekend at this community instead of looking for a better job. In context, every single one of those things was Karen being a caring older sister. She was worried about me. She was looking out for me. But in that circle, with Patricia guiding the conversation and 8 other people nodding along, those memories got reframed. Karen wasn't caring. Karen was controlling. Karen didn't support my growth. Karen was threatened by it. Karen represented the old world trying to pull me back into unconsciousness. I left that session feeling something I had never felt toward my sister before: resentment. That's the technique. They don't tell you to hate your family. They guide you into diagnosing your family as toxic. And because every family has imperfections, every family has arguments and missteps and moments of tension, there is always material to work with. They take real memories and recolor them. They take genuine acts of love and reinterpret them as acts of control. They take concern and relabel it as fear. They take worry and call it jealousy. And once you start seeing your family through that lens, you can't unsee it. After that session, Karen called me. She said she hadn't heard from me in a while and was just checking in. Normally, I would have been happy to hear from her, but now I was listening differently. She asked how I was doing, and I said great. She asked if I was still going out to that community, and I said yes. She said she just wanted to make sure I was okay because it seemed like a big lifestyle change. And in my head, I heard Patricia's voice saying, "She's threatened by your growth." So instead of hearing my sister say, "I love you and I'm worried," I heard my sister say, "I don't believe in you and I want you to stay small." I told her I was fine and that I didn't need her checking up on me. She was quiet for a moment and then said she was just calling because she cared. I said, "If you really cared, you would be happy for me instead of questioning every choice I make." She said, "Tommy, that's not what I'm doing." And I said, "I think it is." And I hung up. That was the beginning of the end of my relationship with my sister. One phone call, one shift in perception. And it was based entirely on a lie that had been carefully injected into my thinking during a group session disguised as personal growth. The third phase is reinforcement. Once you start pulling away from your family, the community fills the gap immediately. The same week I had that phone call with Karen, 3 different people in the community came to me and said things like, "I noticed you seemed lighter today. Did something shift for you?" Or, "It takes real courage to set boundaries with family. I'm proud of you." Or my personal favorite, "Your mother would be so proud of the man you're becoming here. The people who can't see that don't deserve your energy." That last one was devastating, because my mother was the person I missed most in the world, and someone had just used her memory to validate my decision to push away the only family member I had left. And it worked. It worked because I wanted it to work. I wanted to believe that cutting Karen off was growth. I wanted to believe that the community understood me better than she did, because the alternative was admitting that I had just been cruel to my sister for no reason. And I wasn't ready to face that. Over the next few months, the reinforcement continued. Father Matthias gave a talk one evening about what he called spiritual family versus biological family. He said that the bonds of blood are accidents of nature, but the bonds of shared awakening are chosen. And chosen bonds are always stronger. He said that many of us would find that our biological families could not follow us on this journey. And that was not our failure, but theirs. He said the most loving thing we could do for the people we left behind was to keep growing, because our growth would eventually show them the way. And if it didn't, then they were never meant to walk this path. The room was silent when he said that, not uncomfortable silence, reverent silence, like he had just spoken something sacred. And I remember looking around the room and seeing people with tears in their eyes, people who had cut off their parents, their siblings, their childhood friends, and every single one of them believed they had done it out of love. I wasn't the only one this happened to. It happened to almost everyone. There was a guy named Marcus who joined the community about 3 months after me. He was 28, had a good relationship with his parents, called his mother every Sunday. Within a year, he had stopped calling. His mother drove out to the property twice. The first time he met her at the gate and told her he needed space to grow. The second time he wouldn't come to the gate at all. I was there that day. I watched his mother standing outside the fence crying, and Marcus was in the common hall eating lunch like nothing was happening. And I understood completely, because I had done the same thing to Karen. And I remember thinking, Marcus is strong, he's doing the right thing. That's how deep the programming goes. You watch a son ignore his weeping mother and you call it strength. There was a woman named Julia who had joined with her husband. After about a year, the husband started having doubts. He said he wanted to leave. Julia was told in a private session with Father Matthias that her husband's doubt was a spiritual sickness, and that if she left with him, she would be choosing unconsciousness over awakening. She stayed. Her husband left alone. They had 2 children who stayed in the community with Julia. I saw that man come back 3 times over the next year begging to see his kids. Each time he was turned away. And each time Julia was told she had made the brave choice, the loving choice. The last time he came, Julia went out to talk to him, and she told him that if he really loved the children, he would come back and commit to the path. Otherwise, he was the one abandoning them, not her. She said it calmly. She believed every word. Her husband stood there in the dirt road with his hands at his sides, and I could see something break in him. He stopped coming after that. These weren't bad people. Julia was kind. Marcus was gentle. I was just a kid who missed his mom. None of us would have done these things on our own. But the community had given us a new operating system, a new way of interpreting love, loyalty, concern, and family. And under that operating system, the cruelest acts became acts of courage, and the people who loved us most became the people we needed to be protected from. That's the most twisted part of this whole process. They don't frame isolation as punishment or rejection. They frame it as evolution. You're not abandoning your family. You're transcending the limitations of your old life. You're not being cruel, you're being brave. You're not losing people, you're outgrowing them. The language is always positive, always aspirational, always framed in terms of your growth. And that makes it almost impossible to see what's actually happening, which is that you're being systematically stripped of every relationship that might give you the perspective to question what the group is doing. I want to tell you about the letters. About 6 months after I moved to the compound, Karen started writing me letters. Actual handwritten letters because I had stopped answering my phone. She sent one every 2 weeks like clockwork. I know this because I found out later that she wrote them every other Sunday night after her kids went to bed. She would sit at her kitchen table and write to her little brother and try to reach him. I never read them. Not because I was told not to. Nobody ever said you're not allowed to read letters from your family. What they did was more subtle. The community mailbox was in the common hall, which meant picking up your mail was a public act. When someone received a letter from outside, the people around them would get quiet. Not hostile, just a certain energy, a slight tension, like when someone brings up an awkward topic at dinner. After a while, you learn to associate outside mail with discomfort. And then one day a senior member said to me casually, "I used to get letters from my mother too. I found that reading them just pulled me backward. I started putting them in a drawer unopened, and eventually she stopped writing. It was actually a relief, for both of us." He said it like he was sharing a helpful tip, like he was telling me about a good restaurant. So that's what I did. I put Karen's letters in a drawer, unopened. Every 2 weeks, another one would come, and I'd put it on top of the last one without reading it. After about 8 months, the letters stopped, and I felt relieved, just like the senior member said I would. I didn't read those letters until 11 years later, after I left. After I spent 2 years trying to put my life back together. After I finally worked up the courage to call Karen, and she actually answered. She sent me a box of copies because she had kept copies of every single one. I sat on the floor of my apartment in Portland and read 37 letters in a row. The first few were casual, just checking in. "How are you? I made your favorite chili last week and it reminded me of you. The kids are asking about Uncle Tommy." Then they got more worried. "Tommy, I drove out there and they said you didn't want to see me. Please tell me what I did. I don't understand what happened." Then they got desperate. "I don't care what they've told you about me. I'm your sister. I changed your diapers. I taught you to ride a bike. Whatever is happening in that place, please just talk to me." Then the last few got quiet. "I'm still here. Whenever you're ready. I love you. I'll always love you. The door is always open." I couldn't finish reading them in one sitting. I had to stop about halfway through because I couldn't see the pages anymore. The amount of love in those letters and the fact that I had thrown it away, that I had shoved it in a drawer without reading a single word because a man in a group session had casually suggested it. That's the thing I will never fully forgive myself for. Karen forgave me. She says it wasn't my fault. She says she understands. But I'm not sure I'll ever fully believe her because I remember standing behind that cabin door listening to her cry on the porch. And I remember feeling annoyed. And I have to live with that. This is what cults do. They don't lock you in a room and say you can never see your family again. That would be obvious. That would trigger resistance. Instead, they reprogram the way you see your family. They take love and relabel it as control. They take concern and call it jealousy. They take the people who would pull you out and convince you that those people are the ones holding you down. And they do it so gradually, so gently, with so much apparent compassion, that you think the decision is entirely yours. If you're watching this and someone you love has recently joined a group and started pulling away from the family, I want you to know something. It's probably not their choice. Not really. They think it is. They'll tell you it is. They'll say things like, "I'm finally thinking for myself," which is the most ironic sentence a cult member can say because it's almost always a phrase someone else taught them. But underneath that certainty is a person who is being systematically rewired. And the fact that they're pulling away from you isn't proof that you failed them. It's proof that someone has identified you as a threat. Because you are a threat. You're a connection to reality. You're a reminder of who they were before. And for a cult to work, that reminder has to be silenced. Don't stop writing the letters. Don't stop calling even when they don't answer. Don't stop showing up even when they won't come to the door. Because one day, maybe years from now, they might start reading. And when they do, they need to find a stack of evidence that someone out there never gave up on them. Karen never gave up on me. And I honestly believe that's the reason I eventually found my way out. Not because of any single letter, but because somewhere in the back of my mind, under all the programming and the reframing and the years of being told that my sister was a chain around my ankle, there was a small, quiet voice that said, "She's still writing. After everything you've done, she's still writing. That can't be control. That has to be love." When I finally left the community in 2006, the first thing I wanted to do was call Karen. But I couldn't, not right away, because I had spent a decade training myself to see her as the enemy. And even though I knew intellectually that it was a lie, my body hadn't caught up yet. I would pick up the phone and dial the first 3 digits and then put it down. I did that for weeks. I was terrified, not of Karen. I was terrified of what I had become. I was terrified of hearing her voice and having to face the fact that I had thrown away 10 years of her love like it was junk mail. It took me 2 months to make the call. When she picked up, I couldn't speak. I just sat there breathing into the phone. And she said, "Tommy?" Like she had been waiting for that call for 10 years. Like she picked up every unknown number hoping it would be me. I said, "Yeah, it's me." And she said, "Are you out?" Not "Where have you been?" Not "How could you do this to me?" Not "I'm angry," just "Are you out?" 2 words. And everything I had been told about her for a decade, that she was controlling, that she was jealous, that she wanted to hold me back, all of it collapsed in those 2 words. Because a controlling person doesn't wait 10 years and then ask, "Are you out?" A controlling person gives up. Karen never gave up. She drove down from Portland the next day. When she walked into my apartment, she just stood in the doorway looking at me for a long time. I had aged. She had aged. Her kids were 10 years older. I had missed birthdays, holidays, first days of school, everything. She crossed the room and hugged me, and neither of us said anything for a long time. Then she pulled back and said, "You look skinny. Have you eaten today?" And just like that, she was my big sister again. We spent the next 3 days at my kitchen table talking. I told her everything. The recruitment, the reframing sessions, the diagnosis circles, Father Matthias. The letters I never opened. The day she came to the property and I hid behind my cabin door. When I told her that part, she closed her eyes and nodded slowly and said, "I heard you in there. I heard the floor creak. I knew you were right on the other side of that door." I didn't know what to say to that. I still don't. It took me 10 years to listen to that voice, but it never went away. And I think it never went away because Karen never went away. If you're the Karen in someone's story, keep writing. Please, keep writing.